Week 1 is in the books. You've shaken off that off-season dust and walked squarely into the buzzsaw that is fantasy. Stars getting injured, our favorite sleepers snoozing, and players who we wrote off reappearing. Well, let's figure out what to do in our leagues tonight on the Rod Pod. It's time to pull up a chair and talk some Dynasty football. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and this is my podcast. With me are my co-hosts, Jameson, Hutchinson, and Joe Harlow. Gentlemen, week 1 was not kind to my teams. They treated me like the dirty scoundrel that I am. So, how did you fare?
How'd you go, Jameson?
That bad? It was that bad? I did okay. I don't have any, lifelong injuries yet outside of Christian McCaffrey. I did win one of my leagues even without Christian McCaffrey, so that was cool. Jake Moody, I rode his back to the promised land, but that sounded terrible. But, other than that, we're good.
Woo, phrasing. Phrasing. So, Joe, you didn't do well this week?
I did okay. My main few leagues, I got my ass kicked, and then the other ones, I did well. I did well in all the other leagues. But
yeah, that's what I felt too. All of my main leagues I did bad in, and the ones that I don't care as much about, those guys all showed up for me. But tonight we're showing up for you. Because tonight we're going to deliver the Dynasty Debrief, where we cover the players you need to be watching in your Dynasty leagues as we look into the future. But before we do, let's get a word from our sponsors. Start your season off right with IDP Plus. Go visit idpplus.com and get 20% off any subscription for a limited time and get access to our tools, data, and IDP articles. And don't miss out on our subscriber Discord, where people are able to ask the start-sit questions they're dying to know and get answer from our team of experts. So go to idpplus.com and start your march towards fantasy glory today. And do you have a busy life? Do you eat a lot of fast food? Getting tired and looking for a change of pace with your meals? Well, Jameson, have I got a deal for you.
Let's hear it.
idpplus.com/HelloFresh. Get your first delivery for free. Pick from an exciting range of recipes and get fresh ingredients delivered directly to you. Often, a week's worth of meals cost less than a trip to the grocery store, and there are no wasted ingredients. Just visit idpplus.com/HelloFresh and get a free box today. Gonna have to try HelloFresh. Do you think we get free ones for being a part of IDP Plus?
that'd be cool.
That would be cool.
I've enjoyed it. I used it a lot early.
Do you?
In my married days. Not anymore, but in my early married days I did, and it was super nice, or right when the kiddo was born.
We'll do a live read. Next time we'll go right to you for a little personal take. All right, gentlemen, let's start with some QBs. From the Dynasty lens, Jameson, you handled the rookies. What did you see this weekend?
I want to talk about Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, just their overall game, because one on paper looked pretty good in Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams, on the other hand, didn't look so great. We'll start with Caleb. 14 for 29 for a whopping 93 yards, 5 carries for 15 yards, and then the offense as a whole just looked terrible. 148 yards of just total offense, averaging under 3 yards a play. And the one thing I noticed about Caleb Williams, he played with a lot of happy feet in the pocket. He's kind of sped himself up, which makes sense as a rookie, but he created a lot of his own pressures. Guys like, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, when they're in the pocket, they have the good feel for around it, and they can step up when they need to. They can kind of step back, but it just seemed like Caleb was playing really sped up. His footwork kind of iffy. It was the same ordeal at USC, but just kind of all over the place. But another thing, the middle of the offensive line was really bad on Sunday going up against the Titans, so that doesn't really help a rookie quarterback. But other than that, he did make a little bit of the splash plays. It didn't end up completing one, I believe it was to DJ Moore, but if it would have, I think that would have been one of those Twitter highlight reel ordeals. But the only other takeaway, a little worried about Shane Waldron as a play caller. You know, a lot of Gerald Everett over Cole Kmet. I mean, Travis Homer got some run instead of Khalil Herbert. So, and then the only other thing, and this kind of goes back to even the offseason, just where we thought that Caleb Williams can carry 3 wide receivers to fantasy glory, and DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Roma Dunze. It's just kind of hard to see that. But I think better days are ahead. I don't think anybody should freak out over Caleb Williams, but it just a lot left to be desired there. And then Jaden Daniels looked really good on the stat sheet, 17 for 24 for 184 yards, and had whopping 16 carries for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. The passing yards are a little deceiving once you realize that Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson had 101 yards of the 184 as far as receiving goes. That's not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. And then the rest of the pass catchers, led by Zach Ertz, had 28. Luke McCaffrey had 18, and Terry McLaurin, the wide receiver one, had 17 yards on 2 receptions. That's not good. And this was going up against a Buccaneers secondary that was banged up. So I know as far as fantasy goes, it looks really well for Jaden Daniels, and I almost feel like this kind of game would be his ceiling with how bad I think that the Commanders will be on offense. I mean, getting 2 rushing touchdowns, and he's just not going to survive running 16 times a game. I just don't think that's going to be possible. But
I'm with you, Jameson, completely.
Yeah.
I was saying to Joe before the show, the fact that Terry McLaurin didn't get his first catch until their 7th possession, and it might have been 6th possession if they had a kneel down at the end of the half. I mean, you can't do that. You have to get the ball to your stars.
It was the same Cliff Kingsbury offense we saw in Arizona and Texas Tech, which didn't really work there either, aside from this guy named Patrick Mahomes. McLaurin just lined up on the left, doing nothing but manufacturing touches for Olamide Zaccheaus.
Yeah. 27th in pre-snap motion from our hero, Cliff Kingsbury. And I was going to point out as well, Terry McLaurin just locked in, left outside wide receiver, no movement, didn't bother with him, going up. Like I said, I think the Buccaneers are, especially in the secondary, got banged up. They have a pretty good matchup as far as secondary goes with the Giants this week. I'm very worried that the pass rush for the Giants will get home to Jaden Daniels and just clobber him. I'm having a hard time with Jaden Daniels as far as a fantasy guy, and I'd like to hear your input because I just think this is his ceiling right now with how bad the offense is. But I think people will see this and be like, "Oh man, this is awesome." I get that the running quarterback's what you want, but I mean, this offense is terrible. So just kind of where you stand.
To be fair, it's the first week. I'm trying not to overreact. As I watched the game, I was making notes, and every time he started to scramble, his eyes were down.
Yep.
And he wasn't looking to pass. The second he was pressured, he's running. And taking hits that are unnecessary. Lamar Jackson was doing the same thing. It was frustrating me, not keeping his eyes down, but just slide or go out of bounds. Like, you don't have to take every hit. We want you for 17 games. And I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to last 17 games playing the way he did in week 1.
Not at all. I know. To that point, I heard from Nate Tice on the Yahoo. I don't remember if it was his NFL or fantasy show, but Jaden Daniels did not have one throw on the run. Literally every single time he scrambled, he ran. Did not look to throw. That was one of my biggest concerns with him coming out. And he looked very much like the same player he did at LSU, except he did not have 2 first-round tackles and 2 first-round receivers and a couple other 5-stars. This O-line is going to get him killed unless he gets himself killed first.
Now, I will say, in my opinion only, he did improve in the second half of the game.
Mm-hmm.
His passes started to be a little crisper. He was hitting tight windows. I liked what I saw. So is there promise? Yes. I'm going to be an optimist on this one, Jameson. But it's cautious optimism. and he has to treat his body better.
Yeah.
Throw the ball away.
I just think my last thing, and I know it's week 1, we overreact and do all this stuff. I'd almost be interested to see if I could flip them. I know that's a little goofy, but if somebody sees a stat sheet and just like, I've got to have them and kind of take advantage, get like somebody a little more steady. Because I mean, at least for this year, I've never trusted Cliff Kingsbury, and I don't think this offense is really going to be set up for success. I mean, if he runs like this all 17 games, then I'd love to have it, but I just don't see it lasting. So that's just kind of an interesting player, especially like I said, for the metrics on week 1 looking good fantasy wise.
Well, going right along with you, somebody who does not look good in an offense, Bryce Young. I mean, I handle the sophomores. Yep. What the hell was that? You had all off season to prepare for week 1, and this is what we get. His catchable throw percentage. I was over on the fantasy points on their data suite, and his catchable throw percentage was 53.3%, worst in the league. Was he pressured? Yes, but not a lot. His average time to throw was 2.88 seconds, which was 4th best. I've never seen a quarterback who plays so small.
Yep.
Like, it's almost like he squats down in the pocket, and he can't because he's short. And I honestly don't know what to do with him, Joe. What are you doing with Bryce Young?
You can't sell him. I bought him yesterday, but it's kind of an extended keeper league, and it's more of just like a let's see what happens. I already have Herbert and Lawrence in that league, so it was like, let's see what happens. But I think Carolina broke him. I think that first half as a rookie broke him.
Yeah. Now, Jameson, are you really worried about somebody like Deontay Johnson?
Yes, because you would think, especially in the second half, even game script, like he would just get targets even if nothing happened to him. Kind of like, the Blake Bortles days. You had to close your eyes and wait until the third quarter, and then all the magic would happen. The thing with Bryce Young for me is just for his size, you would think, to offset the limitations, it'd be the creativity. He makes no creative plays out of the pocket, out of structure. You were hoping that the offensive line would hold up enough to, maybe run outside the pocket and throw on the run a little bit. But just, it started the very first play through a pick, and it just looked like last year all over again. My boy Xavier Leggett, led the wide receivers and, yards, which I don't think really says much. But this is just really hard. I know it's week 1. We'll say that a couple more times, but it's just hard to see the optimism here.
All right, Joe. Why don't you take us to somebody good in college and make us happy? You're on mute still, buddy. You don't know when he wants us to be happy.
No. I wouldn't say good is the word here. Complicated. This is a very complicated prospect I'm going to talk about. That is the Texas Longhorns QB1, Quinn Ewers. If you know anything, if you follow college at all, recruiting, Ewers has like the highest prospect grade like ever before committing to Ohio State and transferring to Texas. We talked about, I mentioned it with him last week. He's been hurt a lot, electric arm talent, but consistency has been the big thing with him. And against Michigan this week, who, they lost a lot of pieces, but still looks to be a damn good defense. My top 2 overall players in this class are on that defense, and Mason Graham, the D tackle, and Will Johnson, the corner. But Ewers, man, looked phenomenal. He's really put himself in that QB1 case, I think. Still has some throws where it's like, dude, what the hell are you doing? You're going to get your receiver killed. And it's a very schemed up offense. I think he had a very high screen percentage, which at one point was a big concern to me. It's getting less so at this point, just with how many NFL teams do it. But some of the throws that Ewers made, it's like it's not like the Anthony Richardson throw from this weekend, but there's like, which a lot of people were commenting on. It's like, oh, he can't make that throw. It's like, okay, Anthony Richardson, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen, Maybe Justin Herbert can do that, and that's about it. So I don't care that he doesn't have a top 5 ever arm. But he's probably a top 6, 8 NFL arm right now. I just like arm talent at least, and my biggest thing with passers is the creativity as a thrower, and he can throw from any platform. That was my big thing with Drake May, is he could throw from any platform, no matter the pressure, get the ball, and even just getting the ball out. Doesn't need to get to the receiver, just throwing it away. Something we didn't see with Jaden Daniels a lot, is just get the ball out, get rid of it, live to fight another day. I think if he keeps playing like he did against Michigan, and the numbers didn't end up super gaudy, but some of the passes he made, Isaiah Bond on the first drive, the touchdown that got called back, another, I think it was his second to last throw, he was just across his body and just insane with 3 guys in his face and the ball like matrix through. There's talent. You guys have any thoughts on Ewers? Or
I thought that he's improved a lot from last year, just especially as the hype train last year, and then everybody was pretty disappointed. But it seemed like he improved a lot going up against Michigan, which I think a lot of people thought would definitely, kind of fall off compared to what they did last year. But I think it sets up nicely for him.
Who is his player comp?
Okay, so for me, this is a big name, and I don't think he's this caliber. Big difference between him. My comp is Matt Stafford. He's not nearly as big. Stafford's 6'5", 220, and I think Ewers is 6'2", 210, which has led to a lot of the injuries, also in common with Stafford. But the arm flexibility, the what the hell throws, the hospital balls, I think there's a lot of Stafford to his game. Not super mobile, but gets around the pocket a lot. That's my comp for him right now.
I'll take that.
Mm-hmm.
So who, I know you're going to talk about my running back, but tell me about my running back.
For me. Okay. Sorry. Threw me off there. It's another name. He was the top name I listed last week, but that's Ashton Jeanty for Boise State, the blue turf maniac, who he went off against Georgia State, whoever they played week 1, for 267 and 6 touchdowns. And they played Oregon this week. And man, he did not let up. Still another near 200-yard game, 3 more touchdowns. They were only in this game because of him. Like, their quarterback looked awful. The receivers couldn't catch anything, and they just kept giving the ball to Jeanty. I saw multiple 3rd and 8s. They just handed him off on a speed sweep, and he got 12. The biggest concern with Jeanty is he has all the moves and like all the Madden moves in his bag with jukes, hurdles, trucks, whatever. The big question was his speed, and he had a long 75-yard breakaway, something like that, touchdown where he outran Oregon's defense, and they get some pretty damn good athletes, and he left everyone in the dust. So it's like, well, he's not going to be a 4.3 runner, but if he can be low 4.5s, high 4.4s, that was all I needed to see. Yeah, this long speed and the competition, and he just carved Oregon to shreds. So I'm feeling good about Jeanty. I think he's the clear tier 1 running back right now.
Who would be your player comp for Jeanty?
Right now, it's Pocket Hercules. He's not quite as short as Maurice Jones-Drew, but still pretty short. I think he's generously 5'9", and still 220. Looks like the bowling ball. Really good receiver. I think last year, 43 catches. I think he only has a handful this year, but again, the quarterback has been struggling a little bit. I think he went like 14 of 31 at one point last week. But
no, and I know this was for fun, but you shared with us a way too early 2025 mock draft.
I did.
Where did you send him to?
Oh, where did I have him? Let me pull that up again real quick. I think I had him to Dallas.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
That would be
fantastic.
Yeah. I will say right now, if he does not need to play another snap, and I'll have him rated higher than Jonathan Brooks this year. I think he's creeping on that Brees Hall territory. I don't think he'll get there, just the speed factor, but I think he'll edge out Ken Walker from the past few classes.
I like that. All right. Rookie running backs. What do you have for me, Jameson?
Outside of Bucky Irving, who got some stuff in garbage time, not a whole lot happening. But tonight, Raheem Mostert's out. Devon Achane is questionable, and I haven't seen any alerts on him. But I think Jaylen Wright will set up to, have some run here. Jeff Wilson, he's fine. I mean, he's a fine running back. But Jaylen Wright coming out of Tennessee had that awesome speed, and I think he sets up really nicely going up against Buffalo, who is hurting bad on defense. Matt Milano's out for the year. A lot of turnover from last year going into week 2. So Miami's playing at home. I think Jaylen Wright, another speedster. This is what Miami likes. We saw Devon Achane get, I believe, 7 receptions last week, which for the people who are drafting him high, we hear all the time, running backs are going to get receptions in the offseason. We're going to put them in space, and nothing, it never happens. But Mike McDaniel actually did it with Devon Achane. So even if he misses, even if he plays, I think he's going to be probably on a snap count, just because I don't think they're going to run him into the dirt. But I think Jaylen Wright sets up nicely, and really looking forward to him. I think he's one of the better running backs in this rookie class, and I think he can show out tonight.
Yeah, one of the reasons why he ended up on a lot of my rosters is because of injury concerns with Mostert and Achane, and here we are.
Yep.
1 week in, and he's getting some playing time. So I'm excited to see what he does as the season goes on. Somebody else I'm really excited about out of my sophomore crew, Tank Bigsby. Now,
Yeah.
I had written Tank Bigsby off. I mean, I don't write anybody off. I always believe I'm kind of an optimist that way. But man, did he look explosive! His first play, 17 yards. Like, wow.
Did Etienne even have a 17-yard play?
No. So he averaged 3.92 yards after contact this week. He was running strong. He was running behind his pads. 16.7% of his runs went for over 15 yards. Now, I get it. He is only a running back. Like he didn't pass block. Etienne was in there for like every passing play where he was going to have to defend block. He only ran 3 routes overall. So you're getting a 2-down thumper. But man, he was thumping well. And if he can learn to pass block a little bit, it's wheels up. I'd be excited to see what he brings.
Do you think how do you think him versus Travis Etienne ends up this season?
Man, if Travis Etienne keeps fumbling the ball away, I mean, Etienne's a better receiver at this point. Like, there's no doubt. So if it's a split and it looks like it's going to be a split, Etienne will probably end up in a PPR league scoring more. But I think the floor for Bigsby is so much higher than I thought it was 7 days ago.
Yep.
I wouldn't have thought I would see that.
I will say this. I was in desperation mode in week 1, and I actually had to start Tank Bigsby this week.
Oh.
And, 73 yards is not bad, but I mean, he's my man now. But before the fumble out of the end zone, Tank Bigsby was in the game plan. I mean, they started the game off with him. I think this get pretty close to 50-50. We saw last year Etienne fell apart the second half of the year just because they rode him into the ground. But I like Tank Bigsby. I think he had a bad run last year that Jacksonville as a whole just kind of fell off a cliff. But I really like him. I think he should be picked up in all leagues if he isn't, especially in Dynasty. Yeah, I think he's going to get work. So I think it's a great setup for him.
So, JJ, to put you on the spot a little bit,
Uh-oh.
Just looking at our doc, how would you rank him against your other sophomore running backs, aside from the Bijan, Gibbs, Achane, who are in another tier, I'd assume?
Okay, so looking at my doc, right, we do have – he has to be right there with Spears. Charbonnet had a receiving touchdown this weekend, but,
yep.
I mean – Bigsby just impressed me as a runner. And I'm going to have to see it over a few more, but I take him over Keaton Mitchell. Jaleel McLaughlin didn't get the run I thought he was going to get in Denver. So I'd put him right behind the top couple.
Nice.
Right? What about you? Do you disagree?
I still would have Spears a little bit ahead, just body of work wise, but yeah, I can't argue that my guy Roshan Johnson should be over him. Kendry Miller obviously shouldn't. Then yeah, these other guys haven't really done anything, so it's really Spears and Bigsby to me, the next name up.
And Spears is also tied in a pretty even timeshare with Pollard, so that's why I kind of like it's 50-50. But it's football season.
Woo.
And that means a trip to see your favorite team on the road, right? Well, with Expedia, you get the best prices when traveling, and we are thrilled for our partnership. Need a flight to Denver, rent a car in Miami, or a hotel in San Francisco? Go to idpplus.com/Expedia and build the best package to travel to the big game. All right, Jameson, who do you have from the rookie wide receivers to talk about tonight?
Well, I want to talk about the wide receiver 1 overall, the one who got the most hype, Marvin Harrison Jr. 1 catch for a whopping 4 yards is pretty unacceptable for the wide receiver 1 overall in Dynasty, I believe, for most people. It's kind of a tough look. I do want to give some optimism. I think that Buffalo really kind of put the clamps down on him as far as the defense did. They gave him a lot of attention in his first start. And then Kyler Murray only ran for 162 yards. I mean, Greg Dortch led the team in yards, so even with Trey McBride on the other side, I think there's optimism for Harrison. I know a lot of people are going to freak out about it, but I do think that he will set up nicely this week against the Rams. You know, that Rams team is just already depleted, and I don't think you guys should be scared if anybody is. I know the freak out meter is probably at 1 million, but I think Marvin Harrison will be fine. And then other than that, the only other wide receiver that honestly really impressed me was Brian Thomas. Left a little bit of meat on the bone to have an even bigger day than he did. But I really loved what he did in his debut. 4 catches for 47 yards and a touchdown. And I don't know if you guys saw the touchdown. I mean, Trevor Lawrence throws the ball, and he throws it like a half hour early, and Brian Thomas comes through the back of the end zone and catches it. It's a unbelievable ball thrown by Lawrence there, but I think he can end up being the wide receiver 1 out of this class. I just think he's the explosive wide receiver. I think it's what Jacksonville needed last year as far as the offense goes, and I just think that he's honestly the perfect complement. I think they're going to kind of get rid of some of the Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram stuff and kind of give it to Brian Thomas Jr. So I really liked him this week.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was one of my concerns with drafting so much Evan Ingram is that Brian Thomas was going to sort of siphon away that attention. Now, my player, you were speaking about the Rams and what happened to them last week. Puka Nacua. Yeah. I didn't draft much Puka Nacua. I wasn't taking him at his cost. I was really high on Cup, but I'm a little bit worried about this injury. Now he's going to be out at least 4 games, correct? That's what the last
he's on IR.
Sounds like it's going to be longer, though, from what I saw today.
So what are we doing with him? Are we trading for him? Are we not trading for him? Are we trying to make moves? What are you guys doing with Puka Nacua? Jameson?
If you have the team to put him on the bench and stash him, do it. I mean, if you were somebody who's real thin, especially at wide receiver, I don't think you can take that chance. But if you have somebody to plug in each week, like I was going to say earlier about if you had Brian Thomas, I think he's an every week starter right now. I don't think you have to worry about him being matchup. But if you just have somebody to hold on for, get that back-weighted production for the fantasy playoffs, I think he's worth the acquire. But I'm not sure if managers will let go of him. And I'm probably something we need to discuss is just what would you pay for him? That's the other part of the equation.
Yeah, I think right now where I would be at is only way I'm really doing it is if I'm in a teardown and I still have like a Mike Evans or something, they do a 1-for-1. But that's really that Devontae Adams type with maybe throwing in like a 3rd round on top of the older receiver. But I don't know. Puka's main thing coming out, the reason he fell so far is because there was a lot of inconsistency on his tape. and not his athletic profile didn't look great because he was hurt all the time. He only played in like 26, 27 collegiate games over 4 years, and he missed a lot of time due to injuries, and most of them were lower half injuries, but like his film was second top 50, but he couldn't stay healthy and it sapped his athleticism. And I'm really worried that especially Cooper Kupp is a slot only player at this point. You can't take, and he's a slot only and can't do the run blocking stuff that McVay loves to use him for anymore. That was Puka's role. And Puka's kind of, can he do that anymore? I'm worried long term.
All right. Well, Lord. All right. Well, I don't want to be worried anymore. I don't want to talk about Puka. I don't want to upset people. I am a little nervous though. Let's not talk about tight ends. Jameson, who was like a rookie tight end who made you happy this weekend? Did you have one?
Probably the only one. Brock Bowers. Okay. Anybody heard of him?
I've heard of that guy.
Doesn't suck.
I think
hashtag good at football.
Yes. For what I expected of the Raiders offense, which there wasn't much offensively, I thought Brock Bowers had about just as good of a game as you could ask for. So 6 receptions for 58 yards, ADOT of 9.7, pretty good for his first rodeo here in the NFL. And the other thing I was impressed with, I thought Luke Getsy schemed some stuff up for him. I was worried when he was in Chicago last year, Justin Fields ran wild, and that was it. There was no rhyme or reason to any of it. It seemed like they made a very big effort to get him the ball and put him in positions to win. And from Andrew Cooper over at Fantasy Alarm, one of the awesome tight end dudes who covers this stuff, earned a 21.2% target share. Pretty good for a team that's also got, Devontae Adams on it. Ran almost 80% of the routes. Another thing that's awesome. And then ran 65% of those from the wide receiver position instead of the tight end position. So, he's going to be there. And then he didn't block on any of the passing plays. That was another worry I think a lot of people had. So he's strictly another wide receiver with the tight end label. So I was worried initially. I'm a little afraid that my take was going to be wrong, but I think he's top 10 tight end the rest of the way. So,
well, considering half of the top 10 preseason sucked.
Yeah, but like I said before Joe goes, I was very worried about Brock Bowers, and it wasn't a him problem. It was a Raiders problem.
Mm-hmm.
But, even him or Aiden O'Connell, but I just sets up really nice for him, and I feel like I'm regretting it a little bit, not taking enough of him just for the player aspect.
My biggest negative for Bowers right now is that he's wearing 89. Didn't realize that. Don't love it.
No?
As a Georgia fan, I guess I'm probably just biased to the 19 he was rocking. But no, he looked awesome. Looks like his 58 receiving yards was 30th in the league this week. This was just a rough passing week. But
it was a very rough passing week. And speaking of a rough week, I have to talk about my my tight end.
Can we not?
No, I am because Dalton Kincaid was supposedly the wide receiver 1 for the Buffalo Bills, the high scoring, high octane offense from Buffalo. Just a couple stats. Dalton Kincaid ran 23 routes, which was 17th among tight ends. His separation score was 23rd for tight ends. 23rd. He had a win rate of 8.7%, according to Fantasy Points. That's it. Now, just to give you context, that was right below this great triumvirate of Noah Gray, Jordan Matthews, and Josh Oliver.
Jordan Matthews, the wide receiver?
He's now a tight end. But the biggest stat of all for Kincaid is he had 1 target. 1. Ichi for my Japanese friends.
He got 2.
Oh, he had 2 targets?
Yeah. Double.
Oh, never mind. Go ahead. Maybe one was off. Maybe Fantasy Points didn't count it because it wasn't a good target. So I don't know. What are we doing with Dalton Kincaid? Somebody help me. Because I'm flipping out. I mean, I didn't draft a lot of him, but
As someone who did draft a lot of him, it's okay. It's going to be okay. It was a weird week, weird matchup. And looking at it, like Jameson was saying with Bowers, we were worried he was going to pass block a lot. He had one pass block snap. So he's used a lot. I think there was a lot of rotating. He still was in the slot 61% of the time. Overall snap wise, I just closed it 1 second. Going over to IDP Plus, where you can check our idpplus.com, where they have snap count tool and many other fun tools.
Great plug, Joe.
Thanks. Still saw 84% of snaps. I think the Bills just didn't run a lot of snaps this week. That's one hard thing with week 1 is that some teams ran, like the Rams ran like 80 plays and other teams ran in the 40s. Looks like the Bills ran 55, 60. So middle of the pack, I'd say.
Okay.
I'm still worried. I think my tight end 1 ranking was too aggressive, but it's going to be okay.
I think
Joe Harlow, fantasy therapist. It's going to be okay.
I think for him, the good news was he fought off some of the Dawson Knox stuff that I think a lot of people were worried about. But the problem that I had, they just relentlessly gave the ball to James Cook. I mean, they were down 2 touchdowns, and every play was a handoff to James Cook, a handoff, then they get into within the 10-yard line, and then Josh Allen just runs it. It seemed like the offense for 3/4 of the game. So I would love to see Josh Allen throw it a little bit more, especially for the price that we paid for Dalton Kincaid. But I think we can hold steady. The only saving grace is the rest of the tight ends sucked astronomical amounts of ass. So
it was a super windy game. I think that's part of it with Marvin Harrison too. I think there were 30-mile-an-hour winds. So out of week 1, rusty offenses. You brought it up. Just offenses all looked slow. And they have the past few years.
Well, I know my co-host on the All Out Blitz, Doug, said, "Oh, is this like Michael Scott quoting Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky?" He quoted Steve Young, who said, like, September is the new preseason. So,
yeah,
they aren't playing in preseason, so they have to figure out some of the rest.
Yep.
Any tight ends to talk about in college?
Yeah, actually, I have 2, and funnily enough, they played in the same game. We'll start with our favorite school of the pod, Penn State.
Every week.
I don't know if school of the pod is a good thing or a bad thing yet, but that's what we're going with. This week it was a good one. Tyler Warren, who was the tight end 2 last year, top dog in the room, or top lion in the room this year, had a great game. Had 8 catches for $146. So big numbers. Bowling Green isn't a defense to write home about, but Drew Aller had 20 passes, 8 completions were to Warren, 13 completions total. So he was the clear top target. They have a former Ohio State receiver on the team. That's really all they have. Warren has the 5th highest tight end receiving grade amongst all tight ends, according to PFF. And of the three of the 4 above him have 5 or less targets. So he's the 2nd best receiving tight end in college this year so far. 21 of 24 looks like. Nope, sorry. He has 11 of 11 on receptions, has played almost all the snaps. He's actually been in the slot 44% of the time. Andy Kotelnicki has given Penn State a somewhat modern offense. It's looking good for Drew Aller, who we'll get to later on in the season, I'm sure. But
okay,
I think Warren is 6'6", 260. He's a big boy with some athletic ability. And similar to Theo Johnson last year, he's a willing blocker. That's not really what he's good for or what he's known for, but he's really shown he can be a legit receiving threat. Then the other tight end in this game was maybe more impressive, and that is Harold Fannin Jr., a name who honestly I was not familiar with until this week when he put up 11 for $137 and 1 against Penn State, who's like a legit top tier Big Ten defense. And he was probably the best player on the field. Again, this Penn State defense has 2 first-rounders on defense, I'd say. One at edge and another at safety. super impressed with him. He's, what is he? Where'd he go? 6'4", 230. So he's a move tight end.
Okay.
He's not going to really be in blocking much. He actually played a wide receiver 15% of the time in this matchup, or in the first matchup. Looks like 10% of the time overall this season. And yeah, seemingly good athlete, good hands. He actually had a pass in this game. It's just someone later round to keep your eyes on. And how I said Tyler Warren was the 5th best tight end in college so far. Number 1 is Fannin Jr. So the top 2 tight ends in college so far were in this game. Yeah.
Awesome. Gentlemen, I guess before we dip, what is your hottest reaction to week 1? What did you walk out mumbling to yourself because you didn't want to say it out loud to anybody else? Jameson.
I think some people have caught on a little bit, but I think Michael Penix starts sooner rather than later. And I think that could happen within the next month. This week, they end up playing the Eagles, which is a disaster matchup for that offensive line. The week after that, they go Chris Jones and the Chiefs. And then they play divisional against the Saints and then the Bucks. So, I mean, you get Todd Bowles. I just, Kirk Cousins running out of the pistol, and that's not his game. He plays play action. From the looks of it, he couldn't hit off that torn Achilles leg of his, that planting foot. It just looked bad. And I'm worried, especially, I know Kyle Pitts got the touchdown. We can celebrate and, enjoy ourselves there. It's been a long time, but especially for Drake London, you're paying round 2, round 3 capital in redraft, and just, I think it sets up terrible. And, Penix didn't play in the preseason. Everybody kind of made fun of the draft pick, but maybe Atlanta was onto something. Maybe they just found out a little late. And it's not like Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers tore his week 1. Kirk was towards the end of the season. He just didn't look healthy. So even if they put him in play action, I don't think he can drive the ball or push it downfield. Plus, he's 37. I was a little worried that at that age, that's the same as Matt Ryan when his arm just kind of fell off. The power wasn't there. And it just, I don't know. I'm worried. I think Penix starts here sooner rather than later. And I think it's possible he does it within the next month.
Yeah, there were definitely some passes where he was throwing some outs that I just didn't think the ball was going to get there.
Right.
I was a little bit nervous. Do you have a hot reaction, Joe?
Yeah, and just got to piggyback off that. Cousins looked awful. There was not a single play action snap, no rollouts or anything. Just, it was did not look good. Did not look good. My overall reaction for week 1, though, going into week 2, is just take a chill pill, calm the hell down. It's 1 week. This is the smallest sample size we have, and especially, like Steve Young said, apparently, via Doug Orth.
Via JJ Wenner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is the preseason, really. Now, I will say with that, if there's a trend that we saw that is continuing, like the Seattle defense, Mike McDonald's defense, still suffocating, or on the other side, Bo Nix having a minuscule ADOT, stuff like that, things that track from last season where we were at, that you can kind of keep a little more track of. But things that are totally opposite, let's calm down a bit. Not saying disregard it, but slow the roll a little bit. There's massive breakouts, massive busts, like with Marvin Harrison Jr. He's not going to have 1 catch for 4 yards every week. They were rolling coverage towards him. Mark Andrews, they were rolling coverage towards him, and he's recovering from a car accident in the offseason.
Okay.
Just breathe.
Yeah.
And then I think IDP-wise to look at, we saw, I think the majority of top scoring safeties this week were free safeties. That's an outlier. You'll have, even if that stat itself isn't an outlier, the individual free safeties dominating each week is not going to sustain. Nick Cross isn't going to have 14 tackles a week while playing 70% deep. Kirby Joseph isn't going to have an interception every week. Antoine Winfield and Minkah Fitzpatrick might be great every week, but they're all pros. So just remember, keep to your fundamentals, like with the actual players. Just keep to what goes well normally. And as more data comes in, then we can start to change more.
Well, I like I like what you did with that. And I'm going to stick with IDP and talk a little bit about how much the Jets defense disappointed me this week. 180 yards rushing is embarrassing. It's embarrassing. The D-line is supposed to be the anchor of our defense, our strength.
It was CMC, though, right?
No, it's the better back, Jordan Mason. I just don't understand how they could be so bad, how there were no adjustments, how nothing happened. Now, it's week 1. It was a Shanahan offense. It's the 49ers. Like, I'm going to keep it in check. I'm hoping they can rebound. I believe in Salah. I think they will. But I'm really nervous that after all, 2 straight years of them carrying the team, now that the offense has showed a little tiny bit of life, that the defense is going to let us down. But that's me being a Jets fan. So take that with a grain of salt. Gentlemen, it is time for tags where we share any final thoughts you might have. Let everybody know where they can find us. Joe.
You can find me at Jolo63 on the Twitterverse. I am writing for IDP Plus, the Start Sit IDP article every week, including a specific Jets defensive lineman for this week as a start.
Oh, good. Who?
Yeah, Jermaine Johnson.
Oh, of course.
I'll spoil that one. Another guy we love on the pod.
Now we don't have to read it.
Yeah. Aside from that, you can find me probably crying as Wyoming loses to another it's BYU. They don't suck, but coming off a loss to an FCS Idaho last week. I'll be at the game this week. Kiddo's first game, so that'll be fun.
Oh, that'll be a lot of fun. Have a great time. That's a good memory.
Thank you. It'll be fun. First baseball game a couple weeks ago. Saw my Orioles, who are also making me sad right now. Not a great time for my teams.
I'm sorry, buddy. James,
Okay.
Anything good going on for you?
Every Sunday morning, DFS show, talking lineups, trying to win some money over at IDP Plus. Do the Sunday morning live stream. But other than that, over on the Twitter machine at Jameson Rules. And for those who need it, Devon Etienne is active. So just a late minute thing there just for anybody there. And last thing, just kind of piggybacking off the relaxed portion of Joe talking there at the end. The Patriots always lost in September and won in December. So that's talking about the bye weeks and all that stuff. We spent every September, they'd lose a game. We'd freak out as the dynasty over. We're done. But everything's all right. In the words of Aaron Rodgers, relax.
On to Cincinnati.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm at JJ Wenner on X. Thank you to everybody who joined us on the stream. I appreciate you. Thank you to Joe and Jameson, as always. Be sure to tune in next week on Wednesday to the All Out Blitz with Doug Orth and myself as we review the key games from week 2. Then come back on Thursday at 6 p.m. for another live Ride or Dynasty, where we deliver a Dynasty debrief for week 2.
7 p.m. next week.
Oh, it is 7 p.m. next week. My fault.
6 p.m. normally, though.
6 p.m. normally, 7 p.m. next week. So from all of us to all of you, be safe, be well, and as always, boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.